thank you for joining me and speaking to me. Can you just introduce yourself, please?
Yep, so my name's Chris Barrowman. I'm a dentist based in Scotland. Just a wee slight bit of history is grew up in Glasgow, studied at Dundee in 2021. I graduated, so 20 years ago. If people ask, you always say maybe 10 years, 15, and then when you work it out, it's 20 years. Just started working as a dentist. Absolutely love dentistry and still do love dentistry, but I kind of saw there was an opportunity and something kind of missing. This is way back in 2017 or 2007. Sorry, I started up my first practice, and I realised at that time there wasn't anyone people didn't really focus on the patient experience and the patient journey and the kind of culture within practices and building the relationships. Obviously, it's kind of the big thing now, but so that's kind of what got me into kind of practice ownership, realising that it was something that was kind of lacking in the market, and it wasn't something that was available in the other practices. So that's kind of where it went to through university. Just was a kind of standard kind of student, middle of the range, partied a lot, played a lot of sport, played a lot of rugby, fitness, but kind of got through university with what was required, and just kind of growing it from there. And I kind of really got kind of interested in the business side of things, which is then why I started looking into kind of buying other practices and kind of growing Infinity Blue as a number of sites. So
Absolutely. I mean, you mentioned Infinity Blue there, so can you just give us a bit of background on Infinity Blue? Talk us through the journey, how you built a group of successful practices, and any particular hurdles that you've had to overcome on that journey.
Yeah, I started as a squat, and as I kind of said before, it was about kind of starting from scratch and knowing that if I kind of started from scratch, I could do things the way I wanted to do it, create this kind of culture from the start. Also potentially encourage the kind of patients that I wanted to do by the way that we're going to market it and brand the practice. Rather than making it Chris Barrowman's Dental or something kind of, I wanted something that I could grow into other sites if that was the way that hopefully we would kind of go. So 2007 opened, bought a premises, refurbished it, started it up as a squat practice, and really just gradually people kind of trickled in through the door. Massively overspent, as you kind of, as these things happen, underestimated how much it was going to be, back to the bank to get more lending. And thankfully at that time they invested in me, managed to complete it. And then we kind of grew the practice over time. Originally a private practice, because I felt that it was the only way that I was able to kind of create this experience with the patient, and then realised very quickly that it's quite a slow burn, or potentially a slow burn privately, if you want to kind of grow and get more associates in through the door. So open to NHS, and that allowed us to kind of add another surgery to that practice. So that's kind of the Pitlochry experience. And then once we got to the stage where we were comfortably kind of busy there, and to be honest, it was I think it's pretty well bang on 10 years is when we then started the next squat. And that's because that I feel that can be the amount of time until the kind of figures turn. So I remember somebody saying to me, it'll take you 5 years, and it did. It took me 10 years to get to that stage where we were comfortable and then able to do it again. So again, set up a second practice in 2017 that was 10 years later. Again, just a complete model of the Pitlochry practice. This time, just open the doors to NHS to get that kind of patients in through the door. And then from that, we've then kind of acquired more practices, because it's getting the balance between starting from scratch the way you want to do it, but it's quite hard kind of cash flow wise to buy an existing practice with existing patients, with a team, and from day one the money's kind of coming in, whether it's from the NHS, whether it's from plans, whatever. So that's where we kind of started the growth of moving to, we bought another practice in, I think it was 2018. We bought two practices in 2018, relatively local to where we were, so you could almost kind of throw a blanket over the area, which was great because patients were starting to know a wee bit about us. Their friends went to Infinity Blue practice there, and then just gradually, another practice the following year, and then it's been 2021. We bought 3 practices, and this year we've bought another 3 practices. Bought 2 practices and set up for my sin, set another squat up in the middle of it all. So it's been good. But what you tend to find is that it's always quite slow at the start, and as you start to build numbers, that's when people then start, they maybe actually start contacting you with a wee bit kind of off market deals, saying, oh, I've heard about Infinity Blue, I'd be really interested in you kind of buying the practice, or maybe me staying on as an associate and take away the business side of, because a lot of dentists find themselves in ownership, and then they realise they don't actually really like the business side of things, or they don't feel comfortable with the business side of things. So
okay, and you mentioned there the financial side of it, difficulties purchasing other practices. What kind of support did you receive on that side?
Yeah, so I mean, very, very, very early stage, back in day one, we went down the kind of traditional banking route, and that was more, that was kind of thing that you did. You went to your high street bank and you borrowed kind of money from the bank, and that's the way we kind of started things. And it's good, and it's kind of the way a lot of people kind of go at the start, or certainly used to go at the start. What I find with the high street banks is that it's always a hoop jumping exercise. They don't look at the overall, everything's seen in an individual side of things, and it can be very, very difficult, because even though you're jumping around saying, look what I've done, look what I've achieved, I've tripled the turnover in 18 months, whatever, they actually don't like someone that's very kind of, that's kind of entrepreneurial. They do like kind of safe lending, and you find that you have to tick box after box after box after box. And maybe in the past there was relationship managers and they could kind of make it, and now it all has to go to people you kind of don't know. So it's fine doing traditional banking if you're maybe just, let's say you're just doing one practice. It's nice and safe, and it's you want to kind of spread pay a little amount each month over 20 years, 25 years, or get and you are going to have to tie into personal guarantees and security, and do you put your house on the line and your family and so on the line with that. So that's how we started off very early days. And the bank lending, just the more you grow, the harder and harder it becomes to actually borrow from the bank, because they kind of start to see, there's a wee bit more of a risk profile. They just like really nice safe lending. So that's where we kind of the relationship with Perform Finance started around about 2018, and it was literally, I think it was an autoclave at the start. It was want to do autoclave on a lease maintenance package, and then it was chairs, and then it was then it was purchase a practice, and it was purchase a property, refurb this property. And as the relationship kind of built, they became, we got, it's a really good relationship we have kind of with them now. So and it's a stage where I'm quite comfortable when I go to them, that I know that with my past history that they'll they are comfortable kind of lending to me. So, and there's a number of different things that you can kind of you can kind of borrow from or get lending for, different avenues.
Well, that's a good point. What kind of things would you approach Performance Finance for? You mentioned from small to large things now. What kind of things would you approach Performance Finance, and what's available through Performance Finance?
So I mean, it's broken down into different things. You've got the obvious one. You've got your equipment. So if it's a dental chair, if it's an autoclave, let's say you want to buy an autoclave, and whether it's buying out, whether it's doing it on a 5-year service and maintenance package, digital scanners, CBC. We bought a few CBCTs through them. That's your kind of equipment side. And for example, Perform Finance, they like that side of things because they've got an asset, they've got something that they can. So they're always very comfortable lending against these things because there's something that they kind of have from it. Next thing is kind of you've got your purchases of kind of practices. So when you're buying practices, you're buying generally your goodwill and your assets. If it's an asset sale, goodwill and your equipment. So they'll lend for that. So you may go to them and say, I want to buy a practice, it's £250,000, and this is the breakdown of what they're doing. So they'll do lending for that. We've taken lending for refurbishments. So practices that we might be saying, okay, we're gonna add another surgery onto this practice, or we're gonna kind of improve the patient journey. We're gonna get all the staff area through the back and tidy up the kind of reception area. So we've had lending for refurbs, and we've probably got about maybe 6 or 7 refurbs on, and at the moment in the different practices. And the final thing that we've had lending for is kind of property purchases as well. So buying an existing. It's always been my model up to very recently to buy the property at the same time. I'm now kind of turning that around a wee bit where the downside to buying the property is that it ties you up to kind of more borrowing. While if you can, the argument is, do you actually just lease the property and then you're not tying, maybe that money that you can borrow from Profine Finance might be better rather than spending £200,000 or £300,000 on a property. It might be better investing that in some really nice equipment, CBCTs, scanners, things that are actually going to get a return for your practice, or perhaps take that money and buy another practice where you're going to get, you're going to increase the kind of value of the business. So
yeah, absolutely. And how easy have you found it to work with Performance Finance? How easy is it to borrow the money for not necessarily a practice, but the equipment within the practice?
It's been great, and they have been absolutely fantastic with me. Once you start to get that relationship kind of built with them, they become very comfortable with you. So it's not, they almost invest in, I feel they invest a wee bit in the person. If the more they get to know you, they actually start to invest in you. I mean, obviously they know more about your business. They're very knowledgeable about your business, and it's a very kind of professional. It's almost like it feels almost like almost like a smaller kind of family idea, where they know all about you when you invest in them. You don't necessarily, if you're starting to get more and more investment through them, each time you go to them, they don't ask for full set. They might not ask for a full set of accounts, the last 3 months bank statements, business plan, because they understand your business and they always remember where you're kind of going. So it's really nice that way, that you've got a really kind of professional but friendly service. That they kind of know all about you. And it's very, very easy lending through them. It really is. We use Susan at Perform, and you'll send her an email. It's almost very proactive. It's very, we'll try and do what we possibly can for you. We can, we'll lend to you, through Perform, or we'll, outsource it from other and kind of bring it through. So there's lots of opportunities of how they can get the lending. They've got a good panel of lenders as well that you can kind of go to if they want to kind of spread. They might say you want to borrow £100,000. They may be able to split that between 2 different lenders. So there's great levels of options there that they have. So, but really good, Rick. Absolutely, I couldn't recommend them anymore.
Okay, that's really good to hear. And what for any dentists that might be starting out on their journey, like you were 10 plus years ago, what would you say to them? What would be your piece of advice? Yeah,
I mean, the big thing I see is that people they wait until it's perfect before they start. The big thing to me, I mean, you need to make sure you know what you're doing. You need to have you need to have a business plan, whether it's ideally kind of written down, but certainly you need to know where you're kind of going with things. And cash flow is very, very important. So, it's getting this thing. Don't necessarily, there's a big thing, and I did it at the start, where if you've got cash in the bank, you don't take borrowing. You put all your cash, and then all of a sudden you realise that you're actually, your cash flow, you're in your overdraft. So I would really say, it's very traditional in the past. Parents and so on, don't take borrow. I would take lending whenever possible. I would rather have money in the account, because you don't know what's around the corner. And I would go and get lending, whether or not I need it or not. I would be lending and paying it, whether it's HP, very, very tax effective. So that's one thing, is don't spend all your cash and find all of a sudden, because it's always going to be harder than you expect. It really, really is. Don't wait till it's perfect before you start. So just get started. Things are going to change from day to day, to week. It's never going to be perfect. Get started, and then you can start improving things. So, and big thing I've learned is all about the team that's behind you. You cannot do it yourself, and it's the biggest thing in dentistry, is you get these owners that are all completely overhauled with all the information, overwhelmed with everything they kind of have to do. They're juggling every single part of the business. It's all about getting a really good team behind you. People need to know that they can make mistakes as well. You don't want people that come, is it okay if I do this? Is it okay if I do that? What do you think about that? Everyone, all our managers, the team, they know they're going to make mistakes. you know. And if they can do it to 80% of the way I can do it, I'm more than happy with that. But it's letting them know that they can make mistakes, and it's okay to make mistakes, because everybody does make mistakes.
Absolutely. Chris, thank you very much for taking the time to speak to us. There's some amazing pointers, some advice to take on board, and we look forward to seeing how big the Infinity Blue brand can grow.
Great, thank you so much. Really enjoyed today. Thank you.